my connections to this topic are from different sources. In Hungary, I'm the president of the Multidisciplinary Society for Psychedelic Studies. This is the Hungarian MAPS organization, and I've been administering the Hungarian Psychedelic Community website, which also includes the possibility to send in some trip reports. So we also have our own source of trip reports, although this presentation will be about data that is Erowid based. And I was a coordinator of the DAT2 PsyHealth team in Hungary, which is a kind of a psycare team, if you know that. These the groups that go to parties and they provide help in situations when people have some difficult psychedelic experiences or other experiences. And through this work, which I also made internationally in collaboration with many other teams, we also got some data and got some experiences on people having some difficult experiences. And so this presentation will be about these so-called bad trips, which I will explain in a minute that it's not politically correct to call them bad trips. And this is about the nightmare, insanity, end of the world, going to die, disaster, terror, madness, horrific, hell, and other types of experiences. And I put up this nice abstract. You just need to look at the keywords. So these are about the Psychonauts. Psychonauts just take different types of drugs, and with other techniques, they just go into their minds. If these are properly planned and performed trips, then these could be very exceptional experiences. So these could be really life-changing experiences for many. And however, there can be the so-called train wrecks and trip disasters, as Erowid categorizes these difficult experiences, when things go a little bit wrong at the moment, although later it can be kind of fixed. There are lots of factors, including drug set and setting factors, which can have an effect on what will happen. And information about drugs is very important. Pre-planning the trip is also important, and it's also very important not to have a reckless attitude that, oh, I can take whatever drugs I want. It's not the same situation as with alcohol, because maybe you can take another beer after the first one, but maybe you can't take the fifth LSD blotter after the fourth. So it's not the same. I performed a study. It's still in progress. It's a bit mixed methods type of qualitative and quantitative research. And I analyzed lots of self-reports from Erowid and tried to do a systematic charting and categorization, which is very interesting and challenging because there's so many different types of trip reports. And so I just provide here preliminary results because this is still a work in progress. There's so many reports. So basically, just to capture, the aim was to chart and categorize the phenomenology and causes of these difficult and challenging experiences. The methods were mixed methods. It's like two judges' analysis of Erowid experience reports. I said it's still in progress. And the festival harm reduction intervention documentations, which are a different type of source of data. Preliminary results says that we found some categories which are related to at least the substance, the dosing, ingestion, the combinations, and set, and the setting, which can be the physical setting of the tripping environment or the social setting, including the other people who are present. And preliminary conclusions are, of course, that these bad trip causes may be useful to chart in order to plan and manage safer experiences. So this is why the title is How to Have or Not to Have a Bad Trip. So you definitely must know Erowid experience vaults. So whenever you are trying to look up what could possibly happen in connection with the substance, then you should look up some experiences. Of course, they are a bit different, and in general, as I started to read through these, it can be told that it's mostly from the US, and I think it's to a large extent it's from the 90s and the early 2000s, and so it's basically it could be something like a 15, 20-year-old reports, which is a bit interesting because the world had changed since then. So, for instance, in many reports they didn't have mobile phones yet. So it changes some interpersonal communication during the trip, because if there's no mobile phone, you can't call your friend, or you can't get a phone call and get scared of the content that you hear over the conversation. So it's I would say that you have to take into account that these are a little bit outdated in some terms. Nevertheless, there's a category of train wrecks and trip disasters, which include almost 1,000 trip reports. And these were the keywords of the hell and nightmare and so on. And what happened during these trips was that the person lost control of himself or herself. There was some violence, either as a victim or the witness of violence. Could be seizures and convulsions. Some people were vomiting blood. These are physical symptoms, or had some self-inflicted wounds, suicide attempts, cardiac arrests, unconsciousness, and the psychotic episodes. So these are pretty much could be possible, although not too frequent. One thing is that since these are only bad trip reports, nothing can be said about how often people get these bad trips, or what is the percentage of all the trips and the bad trips, like the ratio. And there can be bad and worse and even worst case scenarios. There are some social consequences of the bad trips, like the person gets kicked out of school, loses his or her job, or others find out that there was something with drugs. This, especially I think in the US, it's very, very sensitive topic. There could be legal consequences, like the police, who is pretty much involved in all those cases. So actually it looks like there is a kind of like a escalating situation, which starts with usually someone running on the streets naked, and then someone calls the police or 911. In some cases, the trip mates get scared and they call 911, and then it's the same escalating situation with the police and resisting arrest, and the ambulance comes, and guy gets strapped down and taken to the hospital, put some IV and some sedatives, and then they take him to jail, and there's some legal consequences. So it's pretty much like a conveyor belt that once the police is involved, then from that point on, it will be a bad trip and long one. So this is really like I saw this pattern after reading some dozens of these reports. So the police is, I guess, is the last thing that should be involved in those scenarios, because as many of these reports conclude that there's no help from the police, and mostly there's no help from ambulance either. But I will get back to that later. Yeah, so this medical part includes the ambulance, the hospital, emergency room, intensive care, mental ward. It's in some cases it's just that the medical personnel had absolutely no clue on what to do, and has no clue about the substances involved, and they just do some routine stuff, which involves kind of like torturing the guy in order not to have a second idea to use the same substance a second time. So it's pretty much sounds like punishment based on these reports. There could be some existential worst case scenarios, like fatalities or deaths. These are not always confirmed. So Erowid always puts a note that if there's a death mentioned, that it might not have happened that way. So it's because if there's a death case due to drugs, it's always on the media. So Erowid needs some confirmation of whenever someone claims that there was a death during that trip. So it's amazing how people do not learn any lessons from their experiences. Like some person concluded that I closed by recommending people to stay away from LSD and try other drugs like weed, because LSD is one bad motherfucker. So this is definitely not a conclusion or a lesson. This is exactly drug demonization, which in a complex setting, it leads to the ban of drugs and the criminalization of drugs, as drugs are considered as like entities who might have some very demonic effect on people. There are also like blindingly obvious lessons learned, like this person who said that kind of people like to conclude things and just pass on this knowledge. Like this guy said, never trust someone else to measure out your dose. If you have ever the slightest, tiniest doubt about the amount, check. never, never, never go to the hospital unless A, you're convulsing and or you're having problems with a drug they might conceivably know anything about, like coke, heroin, mushrooms. It will just make completely awful what would otherwise be a scary but endurable trip. So you should pretty much never end up in a hospital because it's not the way. And another conclusion says that always have at least one sober person present who knows how to deal with bad trips, and never eat more than you think you can handle. Chances are you can't handle it. So these I will kind of collect these lessons and conclusions which were kind of explicitly said in these reports, so it will be part of my study also. So bad trips, it's not politically correct to say that, so let's stick with difficult experiences and challenging experiences. I will still stay bad trips because there's a limited amount of time. So in the Erowid train wrecks and trip disasters, there's 467 reports, and this could be included in the study. Optionally, I could include almost 500 non-psychedelic substance-related reports, and exclude those who are psychedelic combos, so combinations of more than one drug. We could exclude 76 deliriant reports. So deliriants are these, mostly these plant-based hallucinogens like Jimson weed and so on, which people also love to try. And there will be a title semantic analysis. The titles are very interesting. There's always something like heaven and hell or these kind of subcultural things included. I could report the rates of bad trips versus all trips, but it's not any significant because of this underreporting of good trips probably. And we also have data from this psyche harm reduction crisis interventions from 96 clients. These were documented. I will show later a documentation form for it from one festival in Hungary and another festival in the Netherlands. So from those cases we have detailed data. And the mixed methods mean that qualitative and quantitative methods will be used. There's a very large data corpus. So first, the researchers should get familiar with the data, make a huge Excel table preferably, and tag the data and review the tags and categorize them. And then two judges would kind of make an independent categorization of the trips, and then they should reach a consensus on suggested changes so that there will be a coherent categorization. Qualitative category examples will be given, and the quantitative category parameters can be given. And there will be some other analysis and comparisons. As I said, this is a work in progress, and since I live in the forest, I'm kind of like doing this whenever I feel like. There's in the preliminary categorization, I found so far like these very clear categories that there are substance-related bad trips, some dosing-related, ingestion-related, combo or combinations-related, set and setting-related. And the setting, I think it's important to distinguish between physical and social settings. And some others which will later be categorized, but preliminary these are kind of separating clearly that this can be distinguished from the data. So let's start with the substance-related. Quite many times there is an unknown substance, or a substance is mistaken as another substance, and that is the root cause of the difficult experiences. There could happen that the vendor is mislabeling the product. This is more like with the novel psychoactive substances and some of the like rare tryptamines and phenethylamines that can be purchased online. There had been some cases of this 2CB fly and bromo dragonfly, which sound like similar, and chemically they are quite similar, but this quite part is really important because there's a different dosage and different effects in the misdosage, and these had led to death cases. Sometimes there's no proper labeling. Whenever anyone has any drugs at home, please label, because the white powder is a white powder and the other one looks exactly the same. And there A difference is like 2CI is, and DOI and 25I NBOME, they pretty much the same kind of idea of a substance, but they have different chemical modifications on the same idea, and their strength is really like magnitudes away from each other. So if you just put an I on a Ziploc bag, then you won't know that which one is from the three. So know your source and do drug checking. This is the baseline. There is a story. I think I won't read it. Basically, the guy went to a good friend's house and was thirsty, opened the refrigerator and took a sip of something which she thought it was tea, and then from the taste she realized that, oh no, it was ayahuasca in this jar which was unlabeled. Of course, one sip of ayahuasca is probably not that trippy, but anyway, so you shouldn't leave stuff around unmarked. Dosing-related bad trips are due to accidental or reckless or deliberate overdosing. It could be either self-dosing, so you just measure wrongly, or other dosing when you rely on another person to measure the dose. There are this high dose, which is obviously a higher dose than the average. There are overdose cases, which is a too much case. There is double dose, which could happen when someone takes one dose and then feels no effect for some time and then decides to take another dose thinking that the first one was too weak or something like that, and then redoses pretty much the same as the next one, the fast redose, when someone redoses too quick. So the recommendation is to wait at least 2 hours between doses. It's a rule of thumb because with some phenethylamines it can happen that the effects just kick in 2 hours. So but for most substances the 2-hour redose limit is pretty a good rule. There's dosing-related incidents due to the lack of measurement or measuring error, uninformedness, recklessness, forgetting. Forgetting can happen when someone just forgets that he or she took something already because he or she is in an altered state of consciousness and kind of not knowing how many times the redosing had happened. Lack of measurement is this eyeballing thing that I think it's like this long line will be good enough for me. You can never trust that. So eyeballing, yes, and there's a volume measurement, which means that you put your soluble powder into some liquid, and then you look at the volume instead of the weight. You can easily miscalculate the measurement, so you should double check if you use that method. Rinsing the bottle. Oh, I have almost nothing in this LSD bottle. I will just rinse with some water and drink it. Don't do that. Met a person who she took like 2,000 micrograms, probably approximately, by rinsing the bottle, which kicked in like 5 minutes and was pretty heavy, so never rinse the bottle. So the bottom line is psychonautics as a tool, measuring, documentation, and so on. There's an example. I woke up in a hospital bed with some device around my dick and an IV in my arm and my mom's finger in my mouth, chewing on it. But right at the moment, the doctor came in and said, we found over 10,000 micrograms of LSD in his system. So the guy was busted. This is, by the way, a very funny report. I was really laughing reading it. And the other one, so my cousin came across this substance called 2C NBOME. It's probably 2C NBOME. I had no idea what this substance was, pretty bad. When he told me about it, nor did I know how much to take. Another mistake. So I proceeded to pour out a little more than a pinky length. Yeah, depends on your pinky, of course. I snorted this line, again, a route of administration, in the bathroom, and it didn't hit me right away. I had asked him if he knew anything about it, and he said he didn't. Yeah, the source wasn't very informed. Just that it was some crazy psychedelic he came across and had yet to try it. So this is an example of recklessness. Ingestion-related accidents happen when there's an inappropriate route of ingestion. And there could be a pre-existing medical condition for the person which he or she might or might not know. So there is very important to know your substance and know your body as well. An example says that, holy shit, this was one of the most painful things I've ever put up my nose, which makes sense when you look at the title. It's Don't Snort, Oh My Burning Brains, an Experience with 2CI. So you should know that these 2C substances are might good in a capsule, but by snorting it's really kind of burning your nose. So you should know that also about the substance, not only the dosage but the route of administration. Combination related happenings are very plenty. So in the data there's a lot of combinations, with the prescription drugs and psychedelics. I guess it's this population of, like, in their maybe late teens and early 20s who are prescribed a lot of drugs for antidepressants or for ADHD or something, and they combine these with the psychedelics as they are in an age of experimenting. So these mixtures and cocktails are pretty dangerous, or could be. Drug interactions between different substances, they might potentiate each other's, or they can, you would think that the similars potentiate each other's and the opposite would just knock out each other. It's not that. The opposites usually confuse the person. So it's not like that you take a stimulant and a depressant and they just even out and you will feel nothing. It's that the stimulant and the depressant will make you more confused than using just one of them. There is this, the random idea sounded like fun to me. This is something that could be put on the gravestone of someone. So it should be avoided. There are some combinations like methamphetamine, LSD, 3-MeO, PCP, which is a dissociative, and sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation, by the way, has a very interesting role. There's lots of trips which include being awake for a very, very long time, and the sleep deprivation in itself can be kind of a bad trip. There's this put the person into God mode. This is the title of the report. There's triazolam, amphetamine, temazepam, diazepam, nutmeg, and alcohol, which was the exponential loss of control. And mushrooms, alcohol, cannabis, and lorazepam was they are bringing a helicopter and I'm gonna be on CNN. So I really love these titles. So know your combos because they might save your life. There is an excellent chart by the Tripsit guys. So this you must have seen before. This is lots of drugs times lots of drugs, and there's a cross table and indicates by different colors if that combination is not kind of safe, but kind of we haven't heard that there was any problems with that, and down to the red color, which means that it's a very dangerous combination. So this can be used also in planning the trips and the combinations. So we go to the set-related happenings. There is they came at the same time. There's some unplanned and unprepared random trips, which are not the best sets for a person. Previous or post sleep deprivation, like previous is before the trip, and post is when the trip is over and the person still can't get sleep. That it's very very bad for the body as well and the mind as well. Delusions, duties, and social conform. If they feel that they have to behave in a certain way and they can't just maintain it, then it gives anxiety. And religious moral guilt, anything that, oh, I'm doing something really bad, and what my priest would say, and my mom, and other things. There's a dichotomic cognitive schemes in this heaven and hell, this evil and good and bad, whatever. These might be kind of basis for people to scare. So know your mind. Interestingly, there is in many reports there is something like a black hole of amnesia. So to a certain point, the person knows what's happening, but when it goes really, really deep, then there is something that they can only reconstruct from other people's other people's stories, that what they were behaving during the trip. So there might be something like like some, not some minutes, it's more like some hours of amnesia when there's only some flashes. So it's not sure that even when someone plans these things very carefully, then it can be maintained, this kind of self-reflection. So it can be kind of, maybe you can call it control, but it can be totally lost without any self-reflection. It can be something like a really mess, and afterwards the people will find out that what happened and what he did and what happened to him. The setting is the last thing I would like to talk about, this physical setting related things. When there's a cold, wet, hot, dry, dangerous, scary, weird environment, like one guy went to trip in some kind of a junky house with strange people injecting drugs, and it wasn't the best environment, obviously. And so know your space. It's in many places. There's a in this U.S. Erowid reports, there are lots of house parties when the parents are not at home and the kids having a party, and then the other people at the party behave very strangely, and this turns others also into a bad trip, or the police comes. And the social setting related things, there might be a hungry sitter who eats up all the drugs and was designated to be sober, but saw that how fun it was. Like this. At this point, one of my trip sitters decided that he had to try it after watching how much fun we were having. I kept telling him no, but he didn't listen. He went to the kitchen and grabbed the hit, then it's LSD, then threw the money at me a bit later. A bit later, I found out that every person in my house had done the same thing. So there's no sitters, but everyone is tripping. It's not a very good set. House party guests, the guests might behave very erratically. The worried mom, unexpected visitors, a tripmate's condition. Tripmates might be really strange, so it's important to have something like a control about them. And telecommunication, this is the thing when a guy gets a phone call and then his girlfriend cries in the phone that the cat or dog is about to die, and then it turns the guy's trip kind of into a negative direction because of kind of just disturbing something came in by telecommunications, which was not planned. Horny girlfriend story. There's a long story about horny girlfriend, but I don't think I have time to read it. So choose your trip mate. Okay, the horny girlfriend story was that girlfriend would have loved to some sex, and then she just forced the guy with the knife to take 15 hits of acid. That you can read the story, it's very detailed. So basically, I think I'm pretty much running out of time, but I will just show the harm reduction equipment from these psyche activities that we have. So we take water, which is good for the tripping persons, and some other information and so on. At some festivals, you might know the Psytrance festivals. This is just a family album, basically. And we were at the Sci-Fi Festival, which is a big collaboration with some people from other countries as well. And so we had a tent to care pretty much space from inside. And then we had some cases. I don't go into the details, but there might be some very strange cases as compared with the Erowid reports, which are pretty much more uniform, like usually happening in a city, but this is at a festival. And so on. Okay, so I have this. Time's up. I'm just showing you the documentation form, so we gather the data for this study. There are some nice Excel tables made from the data. We get a good statistics on what substances were used at the festival. Actually, the substances that caused some trouble for some persons. And this is what to do. So if you take just one photo, then please take a photo. How to avoid things by prevention, it's educatedness, set preparation, intention, setting control, optimal timing, drug reliability, dose reliability, and the social network that helps you. How to manage when there's some problems by harm reduction. You should have a social medical material and backups and some self-techniques to handle yourself. And the integration is pretty much the same. It's social backup, medical, legal backup, and some professional integration. Yeah, we have a manual how to handle bad trips. It's a short manual. If you just Google PsyHelp manual, you will find it in English. And there are lots of good resources: Erowid, Psychonauts Wiki, TripSit, Reddit, Blue Light Drugs forums, drug checking services, psyche organizations. So you should check these out. And thank you for your attention, basically. And